What does it take to end a 30-year career in 30 seconds? For Captain Marcus Rogan, it was one passenger he couldn't stand. He was the king of the skies, a man who saw himself as a god in a uniform, flying a multi-million-dollar jet. She was a 17-year-old girl in a hoodie, just another face in economy. But when he decided to make her an example, fueled by a prejudice he wouldn't admit, he made the biggest mistake of his life. He refused to fly with her. What he didn't know is that she held the fate of the entire airline in her hands. This isn't just a story about a delay. It's the story of how one teen grounded an empire. The air in the cockpit of Transatlantic Air Flight 88 was stale, filtered, and thick with the quiet arrogance of Captain Marcus Rogan. At 58, Rogan was a relic of a bygone era, a man who believed the 4 stripes on his shoulder didn't just denote his rank, they denoted his supremacy. He saw the world from 35,000 feet, and from that height, everyone else looked small. His first officer, Keith Sanderson, was half his age, and held half his confidence. Keith was a new school pilot, a man who trusted the computers. Rogan trusted his gut. "Pre-flight's green across the board, Captain," Keith said, his voice clipped and professional. Rogan merely grunted, his eyes scanning the organized chaos of LAX's Terminal 7. "Green," Rogan said, "is just a color, Keith. It's not a feeling. I'll tell you when we're green." Rogan prided himself on his gut. He'd been flying this route, LAX to London Heathrow, for 15 years. He knew its every current, its every quirk, and he knew, or believed he knew, its passengers. He missed the golden age of aviation, the one his father flew in, the one with suits and dresses, with respect, with standards. Now he looked out at the sea of track pants, hoodies and staring-at phones, and he felt a familiar, low-grade disgust. "Catering's late. Again," Rogan muttered, tapping his pen against the logbook. "Standards, Keith. They're slipping everywhere. It's like no one cares about the details anymore." "Truck's just pulling up, Captain. We'll still make our slot," Keith offered, trying to be positive. Rogan didn't reply. He unbuckled his harness, a motion that still felt like unstrapping a shield, and stood. "I'm doing a cabin check." Keith blinked. This was highly irregular. "Sir?" "The gate agent already." "The gate agent," Rogan interrupted, "is a 20-year-old reading a script. I like to look my passengers in the eye, see who I'm flying." He smoothed his uniform, tugging the jacket so it sat perfectly. He was the king, and this was his pre-flight procession. He stepped out of the cockpit just as boarding was hitting its peak. Sarah, the lead flight attendant, a woman with a perpetually strained smile, nodded at him. "Captain." "Sarah." He gave the cabin a sweeping, judgmental gaze. His cabin, his plane, and then he saw her. She was in seat 12A, an economy plus seat, just behind the bulkhead. She was 17, though Rogan's internal gauge simply registered trouble. She was a young black woman, her hair in intricate braids, a grey university hoodie pulled up over her ears, though the hood itself was down. She was absorbed in her phone, her thumb flying. Next to her on the seat, ignored, was a book thick enough to stop a bullet. Rogan squinted at the title, Advanced Algorithmic Design for Quantum Systems. Rogan's lip curled. It was a prop. It had to be. A look at me, I'm smart prop. Maya Washington looked up from her phone, feeling the shadow pass over her. She was texting her dad. "Me. At the gate. They're boarding now. Plane feels old. Dad. Ha ha ha. Just get here. Harrison is already pacing. Me. Tell him to breathe. I've got my textbook. See you in London." She was about to hit send on that last text when a large man in a pilot's uniform stopped directly in her aisle. He was just staring. "Excuse me?" Maya said, her voice quiet. Cellular devices need to be in airplane mode for departure, Rogan said. His voice was a low baritone, designed to carry, designed to command. Oh, Maya said, a little flustered. We haven't closed the doors yet, have we? I was just finishing a text to my dad. She smiled, a small, polite gesture. Rogan did not smile back. I give the commands on this aircraft, young lady. Not the gate agent, and I'm telling you, phone off. The word off was sharp, unnecessary. Maya's smile faded. Okay. Sorry. She switched it to airplane mode and tossed it into her backpack on the floor. She looked down at her textbook, her stomach suddenly tight. She hated confrontations. Rogan watched her, his eyes lingering for a second too long. He saw her dismissiveness. It wasn't, it was compliance. He saw her attitude. It wasn't, it was discomfort. He saw the hoodie, the book, the phone, and his gut, his infallible gut, told him. Non-compliant. He continued his walk to the galley, nodding at Sarah, who was watching him with a frown. Everything all right, Captain? Sarah asked. Just ensuring security, Sarah. Just ensuring everyone is ready to follow the rules. He looked back toward 12A. Keep an eye on that one, the girl in the hoodie. She's already got an attitude. Sarah looked back at Maya, who was now quietly reading her massive textbook, her leg jiggling with a nervous energy she always got before takeoff. Captain, Sarah said. She just looks like a kid. They all do, Rogan said, and walked back to the cockpit, feeling justified, feeling in control. He had set a boundary. He had established his authority. In the cockpit, Keith was running the final checklist. Doors closing in 5, Captain. Fine, Rogan said, strapping himself in. He couldn't shake the image of the girl, the disrespect, the book. It was all a performance. He'd seen it 100 times. People challenging the system, pushing boundaries. Not on his flight. Not on his watch. The cabin doors were sealed. The jet bridge had pulled back. Sarah was starting the safety demonstration video, her voice a practiced, soothing monotone over the PA system. Flight 88 was, by all metrics, ready to depart. Ground, Transatlantic 88, ready for pushback, Keith said into his headset. Transatlantic 88, hold position. The ground controller's voice crackled back. Slight ramp congestion. Be about 5 minutes. Keith sighed. Holding position? Ground? He looked at Rogan. 5-minute hold. Rogan's knuckles whitened on the yoke. A 5-minute delay on top of the catering delay. It was a cascade, an infection. The system was failing. His perfect, on-time departure was sullied. He was a man who saw small inconveniences as personal insults, and he knew exactly who to blame. It was the vibe, the negative energy, the non-compliance. It had started with that girl. I'm not comfortable, Rogan said, his voice quiet. Keith turned. Sir? With the hold? With the passenger. Rogan was staring at the small, black and white CCTV feed of the cabin. 12A. She's a problem. Captain, she's reading a book. Keith could just make her out on the grainy screen. What did she do? It's not what she did. It's her attitude. She was dismissive, non-compliant. She was filming the cabin when I walked past. Keith's blood went cold. Filming? Sir, that's a serious. I know what it is, Rogan snapped. And I'm the pilot in command. I am responsible for the safety of this flight. And I am not comfortable. I don't feel safe with her on board. Those were the magic words. The I don't feel safe incantation. In a post-9/11 world, it was a pilot's trump card, a phrase that could stop the world. It was also, in this case, a lie. Rogan didn't feel unsafe. He felt disrespected. Before Keith could argue, Before he could point out the mountain of paperwork and the guaranteed federal investigation that would follow such a claim, Rogan unbuckled. Again. "Captain, what are you doing? We're on an active taxiway." "We're on hold," Rogan corrected. He keyed the intercom to the lead flight attendant. "Sarah, open the cockpit door." A click hiss confirmed it. Rogan strode out into the cabin. The safety video snapped off. The cabin lights, which had been dimmed, came up. Passengers, startled, looked around. Rogan marched down the aisle. He didn't stop until he was standing over 12A. Maya Washington looked up, her heart leaping into her throat. The pilot was back, and he looked furious. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me," Rogan said. He didn't ask. He commanded. "What? Why?" Maya's voice was a small squeak. "You've been identified as a security risk." The words echoed in the suddenly silent cabin. A few rows back, a passenger's phone, which had been recording the takeoff, was now pointed directly at them. Mr. Davies, a man in a rumpled suit in 12C, scoffed. "A security risk? She's a teenager." Rogan's gaze snapped to him. "Sir, this is a federal matter. Stay out of it." He looked back at Maya. "Your refusal to comply is only making this worse. Now get your things. You're getting off this plane." I didn't do anything." Maya's voice cracked. She was scared now, the anger replaced with a trembling fear. "I was just reading. I put my phone on airplane mode. You saw me." "You were filming the cabin," Rogan said, the lie tasting like iron in his mouth. "Filming security procedures. It's a federal offense. Now move." "I was not." Maya was crying now, fat, hot tears of humiliation and rage. "I was texting my dad. You can look at my phone." "I'm not looking at anything," Rogan said, his patience gone. This display of emotion was, to him, proof of her guilt, of her instability. "Sarah, get the gate agent. Have security meet us at the door. This passenger is being removed." Sarah had rushed up, her face pale. "Captain, please, let's just—" "Now, Sarah, that is an order." The plane was in an uproar. People were shouting. "This is ridiculous." "It's because she's black. Leave her alone." Rogan was now a block of granite. The shouting just confirmed his beliefs. A mob, unruly. "This is my aircraft," he roared, his voice finally breaking its professional veneer. "I am the pilot in command, and I will not fly a single inch with this person on board. This flight is grounded until she is removed." He had said it. He had drawn the line. He turned his back on Maya, a gesture of ultimate dismissal, and stormed back toward the cockpit, a king who had just passed a death sentence. The cabin was chaos. Sarah, trembling, got on the phone to the gate. "Mark, we have a situation. The captain is removing a passenger. Yes, 12A. No, I don't know. He's refusing to fly." Maya Washington sat, frozen, as the entire plane stared at her. Some with pity, some with anger, some with suspicion. He had just painted her as a terrorist, and in that moment, the fear finally burned away. It was replaced by something cold, something hard, something she had inherited from her father. It was pure, unadulterated resolve. She pulled out her phone. She didn't turn off airplane mode. She didn't need to. She used the plane's own, her airline's own, Wi-Fi. She opened a messaging app, not to her dad. She made one call, a high-priority data call. It was picked up on the first ring. "Mr. Harrison?" she said, her voice low and shaking, but not with fear, with an icy, precise fury. "This is Maya Washington. Yes, sir. I'm on Transatlantic 88 at LAX. There's a problem." She paused, listening to the sharp intake of breath on the other end. "The pilot, a Captain Marcus Rogan, has just refused to fly. He's citing me as a security risk. He's removing me from the plane. Yes, sir. That's what he said. He will not fly with me on board. Another pause. She looked out the window at the flashing lights of the ground vehicles. Understood, sir. I'll wait. She disconnected the call, took a deep, shuddering breath, and met the stare of the man filming her from 3 rows back. She did not look away. Back in the cockpit, the atmosphere was Arctic. Keith Sanderson was staring at his controls, refusing to look at his captain. You can't do that, Marcus," Keith whispered. He'd dropped the captain honorific. The shock had broken his protocol. You can't just accuse a passenger of being a terrorist because you don't like her hoodie. The FAA is going to have your badge for this. The FAA, Rojan said, his voice dripping with righteous indignation as he strapped himself back in, will thank me for exercising command authority. I felt a threat. I neutralized a threat. End of story. Now call the gate. See where my security escort is. I'm not calling anyone, Keith said, his hands shaking. This is your play. You just delayed this flight for hours. You just created a federal incident. You're on your own. Fine, Rogan seethed. Useless. Just like the rest of this. His tirade was cut short by a shrill, insistent beep from the communications panel. It wasn't the gate. It wasn't air traffic control. It was the high-priority satellite link. A call from Company Priority 1. In his 30 years, Rogan had seen that light flash twice, once on 9/11 and once when an engine had exploded over the Atlantic. A knot of genuine fear tightened in Rogan's stomach. He snatched the handset. "Cockpit, Rogan here." The voice on the other end was not a dispatcher. It was cold, clipped, and full of a level of authority that Rogan had never heard directed at him. "This is Gerald Stone. Who is this?" Rogan's blood pressure spiked. Gerald Stone, the CEO, from the Atlanta headquarters. "Mr. Stone, sir. This is Captain Marcus Rogan, Flight 88. "Rogan," the voice said, dispensing with all pleasantries. "I have one question for you. What in the 7 hells do you think you are doing?" Rogan's carefully constructed world of command began to fracture. "Sir, I'm handling a security situation. A non-compliant passenger, potentially hostile, filming—" "Was that passenger's name?" Stone interrupted, his voice lethally quiet. "Maya Washington?" The cockpit seemed to lose all its oxygen. Rogan's mouth went dry. He looked at Keith, who was now staring at him, his face ashen. "Yes, sir," Rogan managed. "How did you know that?" "How do I know?" Stone's voice rose to a near shout. "I know because I just got off the phone with Charles Harrison. Do you know who Charles Harrison is, Marcus?" "No, sir, I don't." "He's the chief counsel for Airline Capital, the private equity firm, the Sharks, as you idiots in the union like to call them. And he called me, not my assistant, not the VP of operations. He called me on my personal cell to inform me that one of my pilots, you, was, and I quote, unlawfully detaining and harassing his client's daughter." Rogan's mind was a blank. "Client's daughter? Sir, I don't understand." "Of course you don't," Stone roared. "You were too busy playing God in a tube. Airline Capital, Marcus. Have you read the financial news in the last 6 months? Have you read the memos?" "They're a stakeholder," Rogan began. "Stakeholder? As of 9 a.m. London time, Airline Capital concluded a hostile takeover of this entire godforsaken airline. The deal was finalized today. It's not public yet. It's not supposed to be announced until Robert Washington, the CEO of Airline, lands in London tomorrow." The pieces were slamming into place, each one a nail in Rogan's coffin. "And Maya Washington," Stone said, his voice now a desolate whisper. is Robert Washington's only daughter. She's 17, she's a certified genius, and she was flying to London, incognito in Economy Plus, to meet her father for the damn press conference. Stone took a ragged breath. You didn't just remove a passenger, Marcus. You just called the new owner's daughter a terrorist. Silence. Rogan's handset slipped from his grip. It clattered against the console, hanging by its cord. Keith Sanderson looked like he was going to be physically sick. Marcus. Stone's voice was a tinny squawk from the dangling receiver. Marcus. Pick up the phone. Marcus. You have to. But Rogan couldn't move. He was staring at the cabin door. Behind that door was not a non-compliant teen. Behind that door was the one person on Earth he could not have, should not have, dared not have touched. He had not grounded a passenger. He had grounded himself. On the other end of the line, in Atlanta, Gerald Stone dropped his head into his hands. His other line was flashing. It was Harrison again. Stone knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he was about to be fired. Rogan had taken them all down. In the cabin, Maya's phone buzzed. A text. Mr. Harrison, stay in your seat. Do not move. A transatlantic executive is on their way to the gate. The plane is not flying to London. Maya's brow furrowed. Not flying? Me. What's going on? Mr. Harrison, Captain Rogan's actions have triggered the Material Adverse Change clause in the acquisition contract. Ethereum's acquisition of transatlantic air is currently suspended. Me. You're pulling the deal? Mr. Harrison, we are re-evaluating. Your father is incandescent. He is flying from London. But in the meantime, as of 5 minutes ago, Ethereum, as the majority and disputed stakeholder, has filed an emergency injunction with the FAA. We are citing gross negligence and systemic failure of command protocols in light of your situation. We've requested an immediate and total audit of the airline's safety and command procedures. Me. What? What does that mean, Mr. Harrison? Mr. Harrison, it means, Maya, that until our people get on site and every pilot's record is reviewed, starting with Rogan's, no one is going anywhere. You didn't just get one plane grounded. Mr. Harrison, you just grounded the entire airline. The silence in the cabin had changed. It was no longer the stunned silence of confusion. It was the thick, heavy silence of an execution. The plane, sealed and connected to a gate it couldn't leave, had become a pressure cooker. Mark, the gate agent, finally appeared at the cabin door, his face a mask of professional terror. He was flanked by a man in a crisp, dark suit who was most definitely not airport security. The man's name was David Chen, and he was the VP of West Coast Operations for Transatlantic. He had been in a meeting about fuel hedging when he'd been summoned by a text from CEO Gerald Stone that consisted of 6 words: Get to Gate 77, now, or you're fired. David Chen walked past the cockpit, ignoring it completely. He walked down the aisle, his eyes scanning the seat numbers. He stopped at 12A. The entire cabin, and the dozen phones still recording, watched him. He knelt in the aisle, a gesture of supplication that was so out of place it was shocking. Miss Washington. His voice was quiet, desperate. My name is David Chen. I'm the Vice President of Operations. On behalf of Transatlantic Air, I am here to offer my deepest, most profound, and unreserved apologies for the behavior of our employee. Maya just stared at him. Mr. Davies in 12C, the businessman, couldn't help himself. What's going on? Who is she? David Chen's head snapped around. Sir, please, he hissed, the plea of a drowning man. No, Maya said. Her voice was clear. It cut through the cabin. It's okay. He can. Everyone can. They're all a part of this. What's going on? Chen turned back to her. Ms. Washington, what Captain Rogan did. It was not sanctioned. It was an unauthorized action. He called me a security risk, Maya said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. He called me a terrorist, in front of everyone. He said he wouldn't fly with me. He was not in possession of the facts, Ms. Washington. He is being dealt with. As if on cue, the cockpit door opened. Marcus Rogan, his face the color of old paper, his uniform suddenly looking like a cheap costume, emerged. He was not being escorted. He was walking of his own volition. He looked small. He saw David Chen kneeling in the aisle. He saw Maya. His mind, still in freefall, tried to find a handhold. What is this? Rogan stammered. Mr. Chen, this is my aircraft. I am handling. Get off the plane, Marcus. Chen's voice was a venomous whisper. He didn't even stand up. Rogan froze. This was the ultimate humiliation. To be dressed down by a suit pusher in front of his passengers. You don't have the authority. I don't. Chen finally stood, his face a contortion of fury. You just cost us the company, you arrogant fool. Do you have any idea who you just assaulted? Assaulted? Rogan scoffed, a last pathetic gasp of defiance. I didn't touch her. You assaulted her character, a passenger shouted. You're a racist, shouted another. The cabin erupted. Chen held up a hand. Quiet, please. He turned back to Rogan. Marcus, the call came from Stone. Who got the call from Harrison? Who got the call from her? He pointed at Maya. The new owners. Your career is over. Your pension is being reviewed. Your FAA certification is, as we speak, being challenged. You're not just fired. You are, in all likelihood, going to be charged. Now, for the last time, get off my plane. The word my was deliberate. The shift in power was absolute. Rogan looked at Maya, really looked at her, for the first time, not as a threat, not as a kid in a hoodie, but as the instrument of his destruction. He saw the cold, intelligent eyes. He saw the book, advanced algorithmic design. He finally understood. This wasn't a prop. It was a warning. He turned without a word and began the walk of shame. It was the longest walk of his life. Every passenger he passed, he saw the same two things in their eyes, contempt and a glowing cell phone screen. He would be on the internet before he even reached the terminal. As he stepped into the jet bridge, two LAPD officers, who Mark had called for a passenger removal, were waiting. Captain Rogan? One asked. Rogan, numb, nodded. Sir, you'll need to come with us. We're getting reports of a disturbance, on your part. It was the final perfect twist of the knife. Back on the plane, Chen was sweating. Ms. Washington, we have a private car for you. We can get you to London on a chartered jet. Whatever you want. Maya looked at him. She looked at the other 200 passengers, all of whom were now trapped at LAX indefinitely. No, she said. A private jet is what he would do. She gestured toward the cockpit. It's what people do when they think they're better than everyone else. I'm not. She looked at First Officer Keith Sanderson, who had just emerged from the cockpit, looking like he'd seen a ghost. F.O. Sanderson, Maya said, her voice pure, quiet steel. Did you agree with him? Keith flinched. Every eye was on him. This was his moment. The truth, or his career. No, Ma'am, he said, his voice cracking. Ms. Washington. I didn't. I told him it was wrong. I didn't stop him. I should have. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Maya looked at him for a long, hard second. She nodded. Okay. Can you fly this plane? Keith blinked. Ma'am, I'm certified, but the airline is... Mr. Chen, Maya said, turning to the executive. Is F.O. Sanderson, is Captain Sanderson, capable of flying this plane to London? Chen was on his own phone. Ms. Washington, the FAA injunction. It's real. Ethereum's legal team. Your legal team. They've frozen Transatlantic's operating certificate. It's all grounded, pending the audit. A gasp went through the cabin. What? Said Mr. Davies. Grounded? All of it? Chen nodded, his face pale. Every single flight, worldwide. Captain Rogan's incident has been classified as a potential systemic safety failure. Until Ethereum's auditors can clear the company, we're done. The pilot hadn't just refused to fly. He had, in his arrogance, grounded the entire multinational airline. The news spread through the aviation world with the speed of a shockwave. It wasn't a computer glitch. It wasn't a terrorist attack. It was a single pilot's bigotry. At airports from Dallas to Dubai, transatlantic airplanes were being pulled from gates. Passengers were being told of indefinite operational delays. The company's stock, in after-hours trading, had entered a flat spin. It was a $4 billion company, and one man had just lit the fuse to its funeral pyre. CEO Gerald Stone was already fired. He'd been given his resignation notice by Charles Harrison via text message. The entire board was in an emergency session, but it was a moot point. Ethereum Capital already held the votes. On Flight 88, now a symbol, a crime scene, the reality was setting in. The passengers were trapped, not by a hijacker, but by a lawyer. "So what now?" Mr. Davies demanded, his voice reflecting the panic of everyone. "We're stuck. The airline is gone." David Chen, a man utterly out of his depth, tried to restore order. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will be deplaning you. We will be securing hotel vouchers and rebooking on other carriers. This is a joke," someone shouted. "My sister is getting married. I have a surgery in London." The cabin was on the verge of a riot. Maya Washington stood up. "Everybody, please," she shouted, and to her own surprise, her voice carried. The cabin quieted. This is not your fault," she said, looking around at the angry, tired faces. You're caught in this, and I'm sorry. But that man, Captain Rogan, he did this. And the company that let him, they did this." She looked at David Chen. "Hotel vouchers aren't enough. These people need flights, now, on other airlines. Get Ethereum to pay for it. Put it on my dad's account. I don't care. But you get these people where they need to go." Chen, seeing a lifeline, nodded vigorously. "Yes, of course, right away." He scrambled back to the galley, phone already to his ear, taking orders from a 17-year-old. Maya turned to Keith Sanderson. "And you," she said. "Ma'am? You're a witness. You're grounded too, I guess." Keith swallowed. "Yes, ma'am. I've already been contacted by the FAA and Mr. Harrison's office. I'm giving a statement." "Good," Maya said. "Tell them the truth. Tell them all of it. Tell them you were sorry, but you didn't. You didn't stop him." The barb hit. Keith nodded, his face crumpling. "Yes, ma'am, I will." The deplaning was a funereal procession. Maya was the last one off. As she stepped into the jet bridge, a man was waiting for her. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and radiating an aura of cold, expensive fury. "Mr. Harrison," Maya said. "Maya," Charles Harrison replied, his voice a smooth baritone. "I see you've had a difficult flight." "You could say that. Did you have to ground everything? What about the people? The people Harrison said, are collateral damage in a war you didn't start, but one we are now required to finish. He steered her away from the gate toward a private exit. Captain Rogan's actions were not an anomaly. We've been auditing Transatlantic's culture for months. This pilot in command, absolute authority. It's a rot. Rogan just exposed the entire infection. So what happens to him? Maya asked as they got into a black SUV. Rogan? Harrison almost laughed. Oh, he's the least of our worries. He's finished. The FAA has his license. The LAPD is holding him for questioning on unlawful imprisonment and endangerment. His union has already released a statement disavowing his rogue actions. He's an anchor, and everyone is cutting the rope. Harrison's phone buzzed. He looked at it. Ah, good, it's done. What's done? The deal, Harrison said, looking at her. Your father, from his plane over the Atlantic, has just renegotiated. Given the brand impairment and systemic risk Rogan's incident has exposed, Airline is no longer buying Transatlantic. So you're not grounding them? Maya felt a wave of relief. Oh no, Harrison said, a thin smile playing on his lips. We're not buying them, we're seizing them. The breach of contract was so severe, we're taking over the company, for pennies on the dollar, to protect our initial investment. By morning, Robert Washington will own 100% of Transatlantic Air. The old board, Stone, Chen, they're all gone, as in security escorting them from their offices as we speak, gone. The SUV pulled onto the tarmac, heading for a sleek, white Gulfstream jet. Rogan didn't just refuse to fly you, Maya, Harrison said, opening the door for her. He handed your father an entire international airline. For Marcus Rogan, the fall was not a slow descent. It was a cliff. He was held by the LAPD for 12 hours, then released. The charges of unlawful imprisonment were dropped in favor of a much bigger fish, the FAA and the Department of Transportation. He was not a criminal in the state's eyes. He was a liability in the federal government's. He was served with his termination papers before he even got home, via email. The subject line, termination for cause, gross negligence. He was summoned to an FAA hearing. Keith Sanderson was there. Keith told the truth. He told them how Rogan had profiled Maya from the start, how Rogan had lied about the filming, how Rogan had roared, "I will not fly with this person on board." The FAA review board, which included a stoic black woman who Rogan was sure was a plant by Airline, took less than an hour. His pilot's license was not just suspended, it was revoked. Permanently. The reason given was a catastrophic failure of judgment and character, rendering him unfit to be responsible for human life. His union, which he had paid dues to for 30 years, dropped him. "We support our pilots," the union president said in a press release, "but we do not support racism. Captain Rogan's actions are his own." He was sued. Not by Maya. Airline's lawyers were too smart for that. He was sued by the old transatlantic shareholders in a class action lawsuit for willful and malicious destruction of shareholder value. They argued, successfully, that his single act of bigotry had directly caused the $4 billion company to be sold for a salvage price of $500 million. He lost. The judgment was for $80 million. It was symbolic, of course. He didn't have it. But they took everything he did have. His house in Santa Monica, the one with the ocean view. Seized. His pension, the one he'd been building for 30 years, garnished to pay the judgment. His 401k, wiped out. His wife, who had married a king of the skies, could not stomach being married to a broke, grounded pariah. She left him, taking what little wasn't nailed down by the courts. Marcus Rogan, The man who saw himself as a god in a uniform was now 59 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Barstow, deep in the Mojave Desert. He'd been blacklisted by every airline. No one would hire him. He couldn't even get a job as a dispatcher for a major carrier. His hard karma was not just that he was fired. It was that he was grounded. He, a man who had lived his life in the sky, was now trapped on the hot, flat, unforgiving earth. He would hear the roar of jets passing overhead on their way to LAX, and he would be consumed by a rage so potent it made him sick. He had lost the one thing he had ever loved. He had lost the sky, and he had done it all to himself, in 30 seconds, over a 17-year-old girl in a hoodie. The world does not stop for one man's self-destruction. It simply reforms around the void he leaves behind. 18 months after the Rogan incident, a term now used as a case study in corporate and FAA training manuals, LAX's Terminal 7 was unrecognizable. The tired, faded blues and greys of transatlantic air had been sandblasted into history. In its place was the sleek, confident branding of Etherian Airways. The new livery was a statement. The fuselages were a deep, graphite grey, with a single electric blue Etherian swoosh that started at the nose and arced up to the tail fin. The motto, painted discreetly near the main cabin door, was simple: a new horizon for everyone. The change was more than skin deep. At Gate 797, the former epicenter of the blast, a passenger was arguing with a gate agent. "But the app said I was on the upgrade list." The agent, a young woman named Chloe, didn't sigh. She didn't roll her eyes or point to a rule book. She smiled, her expression one of practiced, genuine patience. "Sir, I see the issue. It looks like you were number 1 on the list, but the system didn't process it when you checked in. I am so sorry about that. Let me fix it right now." She typed for a moment. "Okay, Mr. Grant. I've manually moved you. You're all set in 2A, and I've added a 5,000-mile credit to your account for the system error. That's on us." The man who had been bracing for a fight deflated. "Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much." "It's our pleasure," Chloe said, and meant it. "That's the Etherian way. Have a wonderful flight." This was the Sanderson-Washington Protocol in action, a new, mandatory 80-hour training course for all public-facing employees, from pilots to baggage handlers. It was a curriculum designed by a team of psychologists, sociologists, and retired air marshals, with a final sign-off from the board's new Passenger Ethics Committee. It trained employees to de-escalate, to listen, and, most importantly, it empowered them to fix problems on the spot. The old transatlantic culture of the pilot is God and the passenger is cargo was gone. The new culture was one of service. Miles away, in a cluttered dorm room at Stanford University, Maya Washington was on a video call. She was now 19, a sophomore, and her room was a familiar landscape of textbooks, half-full coffee mugs, and a whiteboard covered in quantum equations. Pinned to the wall, right next to a complex string theory diagram, was her new Etherian Airways board member ID. On her screen was Jennifer Walsh, the new CEO of Etherian. Walsh was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, poached from a rival airline by Robert Washington, specifically because she had a reputation for 2 things: ruthless logistical efficiency and an unshakable moral compass. "The Dubai complaint has been handled," Walsh said, her voice crisp. "The employee in question, a ground supervisor, violated Protocol 12B. He refused to allow a passenger to board because of a culturally inappropriate T-shirt. He's on a 60-day unpaid suspension and is being retrained from scratch. One more incident, and he's gone." Maya nodded, tucking her hair behind her ear. And the passenger? She received a full refund, a first-class ticket for her rebooked flight, and a personal apology from me, Walsh said. We also reviewed the footage. The supervisor was 100% in the wrong, and the gate agent who did try to intervene and was overruled has been given a commendation and a bonus. Good, Maya said. That's good. That's what the protocol is for. To find the people who get it and lift them up. Speaking of, Walsh said, a rare, warm smile breaking through her professional demeanor. I just approved the funds for the second round of the Captain James Washington Aviation Scholarship. Maya's face lit up. This was her passion project, named for her grandfather, a Tuskegee-era airman who had been denied a commercial pilot's license his entire life because of his race. How's the first recipient doing? How's Angela? Angela, Walsh said, pulling up a file, is currently top of her class at Embry-Riddle. Her instructors say she's a natural. She'll be in an Etherian cockpit in 3 years, guaranteed. You changed a life, Maya. Maya looked at a small framed photo of her grandfather on her desk. He was a young man in a leather flight jacket, squinting proudly into the sun. She's changing her own life, Miss Walsh. We just opened the door. Rogan kept trying to lock those doors. Well, Walsh said, he doesn't have the keys anymore. Back at LAX, at that same Gate 77, Captain Keith Sanderson was in the cockpit of Flight 88 to London. The left-hand seat, the captain's seat, fit him perfectly. The 4 stripes on his shoulder felt heavy, but not with arrogance. They were heavy with responsibility. His testimony at the FAA hearing and his subsequent cooperation with the Etherian transition team had fast-tracked his career. He hadn't just not been Rogan, he had actively embraced the new culture. He had been one of the first to volunteer for the Sanderson-Washington Protocol, and his input had been invaluable. He performed his pre-flight checks, but his ritual had changed. He no longer just checked the instruments. He checked himself. He took a quiet moment, closed his eyes, and remembered the feeling in that cockpit 18 months ago. The fear, the suffocating silence of his own cowardice. He remembered Maya's face, streaked with tears. He remembered Rogan's roar, "I will not fly with this person on board." He had sworn to himself, never again. Never again would he be silent. He finished his checks and did what was now mandatory for all Etherian flight captains. He went to the cabin door to greet his passengers. "Welcome aboard," he said, making eye contact and smiling at each person. "Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for flying with us." Then he saw her. A young black mother, her face a mask of stress, was wrestling a collapsible stroller that refused to collapse. Her baby, in her other arm, had just started to wail, a high-pitched, piercing cry that turned heads. The mother's eyes filled with tears of frustration. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm holding everyone up." Sanderson stepped out of the cockpit's shadow and into the jet bridge. "Mom, please don't apologize," he said, his voice a calm, deep rumble. "I've got 2 of my own. These strollers are designed by engineers, not parents. May I?" The woman, stunned to see the captain, nodded. Sanderson took the stroller. "It's this little button under the handle. They hide it," he said. With a practiced click-thwump, the stroller folded flat. "And what's his name?" "Leo," the mother whispered, her tears of frustration turning to relief. "Well, welcome aboard, Leo," Sanderson said, patting the baby's foot. He handed the stroller to the flight attendant. "Sarah," he said to the same lead flight attendant from that fateful day. She too had been retrained and promoted. "Can we make sure Leo and his mum are extra comfortable today?" "Right away, Captain," Sarah smiled, As Sanderson walked back to the cockpit, his first officer, a sharp young woman named Amelia, nodded at him. "That was nice, Captain." "It's the job, Amelia," Keith said, strapping in. "It's the whole job." He felt good. He felt right. He was ready to fly. 130 miles away, in the sun-scorched emptiness of the Mojave Desert, the hard Karma was breathing its hot, dry air. Barstow, California. The 10 Mars AM temperature was already 106 degrees. The operations center for Mojave Sky Cargo was a double-wide trailer, its white paint peeling, its foundation propped up on cinder blocks. The air conditioner in the window rattled like a dying animal, barely cutting the oppressive heat. Inside, under a flickering fluorescent light, sat Marcus Rogan. He was 60 years old and looked 80. His proud, barrel chest had slumped. His face was a road map of broken veins and bitter lines. His uniform was a cheap, sweat-stained beige polo shirt with a peeling iron-on logo of a coyote howling at a moon. He was a logistics coordinator, a title that was a cruel joke. He was a dispatcher. His world, once a 35,000-foot kingdom of clouds and supremacy, was now a 10-by-10-foot box that smelled of stale coffee and dust. A radio crackled, the voice tinny and full of static. "Mojave Ops, this is Cargo 39er. I'm on the ground. Where do you want this box of rocks?" Rogan flinched. He hated the pilots. Young, arrogant kids flying ancient prop planes. He keyed the mic, his voice a dead, gravelly monotone. 39er. Park it on the north tarmac. And be advised the fuel truck is running an hour behind schedule. "Again?" The pilot's voice shot back, dripping with contempt. "You guys in ops are a joke. Get it together." Click. Rogan's hand, white-knuckled, squeezed the mic. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tell that kid that he had 30 years in a 7 that he was a king. But he couldn't. He was Marcus Rogan, the man who grounded an airline. He had been blacklisted, not just by the FAA, which had revoked his license permanently, but by every airline on Earth. He was a pariah, a liability. The class action lawsuit from the original transatlantic shareholders had taken everything. His Santa Monica house, his pension, his 401k, his boat. His wife, Catherine, had stayed for exactly 1 month. She had watched him transform from a god into a whining, unemployed, rage-filled shell. She left, taking the Lexus, the dog, and his last shred of dignity. He now lived in a rented room in a run-down house on the edge of town, with 3 other men who worked at the nearby truck stop. The only reason he had this job at all was the final, exquisite twist of the knife. Etherian Airways, as part of a logistical expansion, had bought Mojave Sky Cargo for pennies. His job was, in effect, charity, a prison. He was owned, body and soul, by Robert Washington. His salary was just enough to pay his rent and his court-ordered restitution. He would work until he died. Today was a special kind of hell. A radio console in the trailer had fried. Etherion wouldn't pay to courier a new one. "We have an employee flying deadhead," a logistics email from LAX had informed him. "He will transport the part." That employee was him. He had to drive his 1998 Honda Civic, with its broken air conditioning, 2 hours through the desert to LAX. He had to fly commercial. And his employee pass, the only perk he had, was only valid on one airline, Etherion. He was the last to board Flight 88. He shuffled, keeping his head down, hoping not to be recognized. He wore his stained cargo polo shirt, a pair of worn jeans, and the haunted look of a ghost. He just wanted to get to his jump seat in the back, the one reserved for non-revving employees, the one by the lavatories. He stepped through the cabin door, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Welcome aboard, sir." That voice. Rogan's head snapped up. He froze. His blood turned to ice water. It was Keith Sanderson. But it wasn't Keith. It was Captain Sanderson. Standing at the cockpit door, resplendent in his new, perfectly tailored, graphite-grey uniform. The 4 stripes on his shoulder seemed to glow with authority. He looked younger, fitter, and happier. He looked in command. Rogan's mind short-circuited. The humiliation was so total, so profound, it was almost a physical blow. He saw the man he had scorned, the new school kid he had bullied, the coward who had watched him ruin himself. And he was now the gatekeeper. The king. "Marcus!" Sanderson's voice was quiet, not triumphant. It was laced with a deep, profound pity, which was, for Rogan, infinitely worse than hatred. "Keith!" Rogan choked out. He tried to muster a shred of his old authority, a wisp of his old self. "Captain?" The word tasted like ash in his mouth. It's been a while," Sanderson said, a small, sad nod. He had known this day might come. He had dreaded it. "Yeah." Rogan couldn't bear the eye contact. He couldn't stand the pity. He couldn't stand seeing his old life, his old uniform, his old plane being worn by him. He shoved past, nearly knocking over a flight attendant, and fled down the aisle, a wraith retreating from the light. Sanderson watched him go, a man he once looked up to, now reduced to a bitter, shuffling shell. He felt no joy, just a deep, final, and necessary sorrow. Justice, he realized, wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was the simple, irreversible turning of a page. He stepped back into the cockpit and sealed the door. The sound of the lock clicking into place was, for him, the sound of finality. "Cabin, doors for departure," he said to his first officer. "Let's fly." Keith Sanderson pushed the throttles forward. The engines roared to life, a sound of pure, unleashed potential. "V1, he called. "Rotate." He pulled back on the yoke, and the massive jet lifted gracefully into the California sky, soaring toward the new horizon. In the back, in the windowless, rattling, fold-down jump seat, Marcus Rogan felt the familiar, beautiful, agonizing feeling of G-force pressing him back, the feeling he had lived for. But he couldn't see the sky. He couldn't see the clouds. He was blind. He was cargo. He closed his eyes as the landing gear retracted with a solid thunk. A single, hot, useless tear of pure, impotent rage traced a clean path through the grime on his cheek. A moment later, the PA system chimed. "Good morning, everyone. This is Captain Sanderson. Welcome aboard Etherian Airways Flight 88, with service to London. We're expecting a smooth ride today. Sit back, relax. We'll take care of you." Rogan heard the voice. The warmth, the confidence, the authority. The voice of the man he had tried to ruin. The voice of the new reality he had created for himself. And he knew, as the plane banked east over the desert that was now his home, that he was, and would forever be, grounded. In the end, Captain Rogan's prejudice cost him everything. He didn't just lose his job, he lost his pension, his home, and the one thing he loved, the sky. He learned the hard way that the 4 stripes on his shoulder didn't give him power. They gave him a responsibility he failed. Maya Washington didn't ask for a fight, but when one was brought to her, she didn't just win. She rewrote the entire rule book. She grounded the arrogance of one man, and, in doing so, rebuilt an entire airline in her own image, one built on respect, integrity, and the understanding that everyone, no matter who they are, deserves to fly. What do you think? Was that the ultimate karma? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe he got what he deserved? If you loved this story, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to see this. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We have new stories of karma and dramatic justice every week, and you won't want to miss a single one.